Welcome to this Reader's Theater presentation of the Gospel of John, or, as we are saying, the Gospel according to Johanna. Picking up on a suggestion by a contemporary Johannine scholar, Robert Kaisar, that the fourth Gospel could have been written by a woman. We've also decided to wake up the senses with a knock to the head with a 2x4, so to speak. We've changed the gender of Jesus, God the Father, and some other key characters in the gospel narrative. Not to push an agenda, mind you, but to arouse a response. So we invite you to listen intently, taking note of how the words affect you. What feelings do they create in you? What thoughts come to mind? What difference do these words make? Our study of this gospel has made clear its uniqueness among the gospels. And central to that uniqueness is the relation of the Father to the Son and the Son to the Father. This is explicitly masculine language. Does it have to be masculine? We hope our thought experiment will drive home that question in a way that reading the gospel in the traditional way would not have done. We've made each chapter a scene with its cast of characters. These characters will be read by different readers as we move through the chapters. Note that the evangelist, Johanna, if you will always be at the pulpit. Yeshua, the name we've given Jesus, will be at the lectern. We will read only the first half of the gospel today. The second half will be read on April 12th, the Wednesday after Easter. We've also had to omit some chapters to fit this reading into under an hour. And we'll begin with a special twist, a verse-by-verse comparison of the Revised Standard Version translation and the Voice translation, just in the prologue, chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. The Voice is the translation that we will be using throughout the rest of the gospel. At the end of our reading, we'll have a song, "The Lord is My Shepherd," the Bobby McFerrin version. And then we would like to have a brief discussion for an opportunity for you to give your feedback on what you have heard today. And so, now, the gospel according to Johanna.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Before time itself was measured, the voice was speaking. The voice was and is God.
He was in the beginning with God.
This celestial word remained ever present with the Creator.
All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
Her speech shaped the entire cosmos, immersed in the practice of creating. All things that exist were birthed in her.
In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
And her breath filled all things with a living, breathing light.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness was not overcome it.
A light that thrives in the depths of darkness, blazes through murky bottoms. It cannot and will not be quenched.
There was a man sent from God, whose name was John.
A man named John, who was sent by God, was the first to clearly articulate the source of light.
He came for testimony, to bear witness to the light, that all might believe through him.
This baptizer put in plain words the elusive mystery of the divine light, so all might believe through him. Some wondered whether he might be the light.
He was not the light, but came to bear witness to the light.
But John was not the light. He merely pointed to the light.
The true light that enlightens every man was coming into the world.
The true light who shines upon the heart of everyone was coming into the cosmos.
He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Yet the world knew him not.
She entered our world, a world she made, yet the world did not recognize her.
He came to his own home, and his own people received him not.
Even though she came to her own people, they refused to listen and receive her.
But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God.
But for all who did receive and trust in her, she gave them the right to be reborn as children of God.
Who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God.
She bestowed this birthright not by human power or initiative, but by God's will.
And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. We have beheld his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father.
The voice took on flesh and became human and chose to live among us. We have seen her enveloped in undeniable splendor, the one true daughter of the Mother, evidenced in perfect balance of grace and truth.
John bore witness to him and cried, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks before me,' for he was before me."
John the Baptist testified about her and shouted, "This is the one I've been telling you is coming. She is much greater than I am because she existed long before me."
And from his fullness have we all received grace upon grace.
And through this woman, we all receive gifts of grace beyond our imagination.
For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.
You see, Moses gave us rules to live by, but the Anointed offered us gifts of grace and truth.
No one has ever seen God, the only Son who is in the bosom of the Father. He has made him known.
God, unseen until now, is revealed in the voice. God's only daughter, straight from the mother's heart.
Chapter 2, The Wedding at Cana.
3 days later, they all went to celebrate a wedding feast in Cana of Galilee. Joseph, the father of Yeshua, was invited, together with her and her disciples. While they were celebrating, the wine ran out, and Yeshua's father hurried over to his daughter.
The host stands on the brink of embarrassment. There are many guests, and there is no more wine.
Dear Father, is it our problem they miscalculated when buying wine and inviting guests? My time has not yet arrived.
But Joseph turned to the servants.
Do whatever my daughter tells you.
In that area were 6 massive stone water pots that could each hold 20 to 30 gallons. They were typically used for Jewish purification rites. Yeshua's instructions were clear.
Fill each water pot with water until it's ready to spill over the top. Then fill a cup and deliver it to the head waiter.
They did exactly as they were instructed. After tasting the water that had become wine, the head waiter couldn't figure out where such wine came from, even though the servants knew. And he called over the bridegroom in amazement.
This wine is delectable. Why would you save the most exquisite fruit of the vine? A host would generally serve the good wine first, and when his inebriated guests didn't notice or care, he would serve them the inferior wine. You have held back the best for last.
Yeshua performed this miracle, the first of her signs, in Cana of Galilee. They did not know how this happened, but when the disciples and the servants witnessed this miracle, their faith blossomed. Yeshua then gathered her clan, her family members and disciples, for a journey to Capernaum, where they lingered several days. The time was near to celebrate the Passover, the festival commemorating when God rescued the people from slavery in Egypt. So Yeshua went to Jerusalem for the celebration. Upon arriving, she entered the temple to worship. But the porches and colonnades were filled with merchants selling sacrificial animals, such as doves, oxen, and sheep, and exchanging money. Yeshua fashioned a whip of cords and used it with skill, driving out animals. She scattered the money and overturned the tables, emptying profiteers from the house of God. There were dove merchants still standing around, and Yeshua reprimanded them.
What are you still doing here? Get all your stuff and haul it out of here. Stop making God's house a place for your own profit.
The disciples were astounded, but they remembered that the Hebrew scriptures said,
Jealous devotion for God's house consumes me.
Some of the Jews cried out to him in unison,
Who gave you the right to shut us down?
If it is God, then show us a sign.
You want a sign?
No. You want a sign? Here it is. Destroy this temple, and I will rebuild it in 3 days.
3 days? This temple took more than 46 years to complete.
You think you can replicate that feat in 3 days?
the true temple was her body. Her disciples remembered this bold prediction after she was resurrected. Because of this knowledge, their faith in the Hebrew scriptures and in Yeshua's teachings grew. During the Passover feast in Jerusalem, the crowds were watching Yeshua closely, and many began to believe in her because of the signs she was doing. But Yeshua saw through to the heart of humankind, and she chose not to give them what they requested. She didn't need anyone to prove to her the character of humanity. She knew what people were made of.
Chapter 3. Yeshua and Nicodemus.
Nicodemus was one of the Pharisees, a woman with some clout among her people. She came to Yeshua under the cloak of darkness to question her.
Teacher, some of us have been talking. You are obviously a teacher who has come from God. The signs you are doing are proof that God is with you.
I tell you the truth. Only someone who experiences birth for a second time can hope to see the kingdom of God.
But I am a grown woman. How can someone be born again when she's old like me? Am I to crawl back into my mother's womb for a second birth? That's impossible.
I tell you the truth. If someone does not experience water and spirit birth, there's no chance she will make it into God's kingdom. Like from like. Whatever is born from flesh is flesh. Whatever is born from spirit is spirit. Don't be shocked by my words, but I tell you the truth. Even you, uneducated and respected woman among your people, must be reborn by the Spirit to enter the kingdom of God. The wind blows all around us as if it has a will of its own. We feel it and we hear it, but we do not understand where it has come from or where it will end up. Life in the Spirit is as if it were the wind of God.
I still do not understand how this can be.
Your responsibility is to instruct Israel in matters of faith, but you do not comprehend the necessity of life in the Spirit? I tell you the truth. We speak about the things we know, and we give evidence about the things we have seen, and you choose to reject the truth of our witness. If you do not believe when I talk to you about ordinary earthly realities, then heavenly realities will certainly elude you. No one has ever journeyed to heaven above except the one who has come down from heaven, the daughter of humanity who is of heaven. Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. In the same way, the daughter of humanity must be lifted up. Then all those who believe in her will experience everlasting life.
Chapter 4. At Jacob's well in Samaria.
The picture was becoming clear to the Pharisees that Yeshua had gained a following much larger than that of John the Baptist, the wandering prophet. Now Yeshua could see that the Pharisees were beginning to plot against her. This was because her disciples were busy ritually cleansing many new disciples through baptism. She chose to leave Judea, where most Pharisees lived, and return to a safer location in Galilee. This was a trip that would take them through Samaria. In a small Samaritan town known as Sychar, Yeshua and her entourage stopped to rest at the historic well that Jacob gave his son Joseph. It was about noon when Yeshua found a spot to sit close to the well, while the disciples ventured off to find provisions. From her vantage, she watched as a Samaritan man approached to draw some water. Unexpectedly, Yeshua spoke to him.
Would you draw water and give me a drink?
I cannot believe that you, a Jew, would associate with me, a Samaritan man, much less ask me to give you a drink.
Jews, you see, have no dealings with Samaritans.
You don't know the gift of God or who is asking you for a drink of this water from Jacob's well, because if you did, you would have asked her for something greater, and she would have given you the living water.
Madam, you sit by this deep well, a thirsty woman without a bucket in sight. Where does the living water come from? Are you claiming superiority to our father Jacob, who labored long and hard to dig and maintain this well so that he could share clean water with his sons, grandchildren, and cattle?
Drink this water, and your thirst is quenched only for a moment. You must return to this well again and again. I offer water that will become a wellspring within you that gives life throughout eternity. You will never be thirsty again.
Please, madam, give me some of this water, so I'll never be thirsty and never again have to make this trip to this well.
Then bring your wife to me.
I do not have a wife.
Technically, you're telling the truth. But you have had 5 wives and are currently living with a woman that you are not married to.
Madam, it is obvious to me that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped here on this mountain, but your people say that Jerusalem is the only place for all of us to worship. Which is it?
Man, I tell you that neither is so. Believe this. A new day is coming. In fact, it's already here, when the importance will not be placed on the time and place of worship, but on the truthful hearts of worshipers. You worship what you don't know, while we worship what we do know, for God's salvation is coming through the Jews. The mother is spirit, and she is seeking followers whose worship is sourced in truth and deeply spiritual as well. Regardless of whether you are in Jerusalem or on this mountain, if you do not seek the true God, then you do not worship.
These mysteries will be made clear by she who is promised, the Anointed One.
The Anointed is speaking to you. I am the one you have been looking for.
The disciples returned to her and gathered around her in amazement that she would openly break their customs by speaking to this man. But none of them would ask her what she was looking for or why she was speaking with him. The man went back to the town, leaving his water pot behind. He stopped men and women on the streets and told them about what had happened.
I met a stranger who knew everything about me. Come and see for yourselves. Can she be the Anointed One?
A crowd came out of the city and approached. During all of this, the disciples were urging Yeshua to eat the food they gathered.
I have food to eat that you know nothing about.
Is it possible someone else has brought her food while we were away?
I received my nourishment by serving the will of the mother who sent me and completing her work. You have heard others say, be patient. We have 4 more months to wait until the crops are ready for the harvest. I say, take a closer look, and you will see that the fields are ripe and ready for the harvest. The harvester is collecting her pay, harvesting fruit ripe for eternal life. So even now, she and the sower are celebrating their fortune. The saying may be old, but it is true. One person sows and another reaps. I sent you to harvest where you have not labored. Someone else took the time to plant and cultivate, and you feast on the fruit of their labor.
Meanwhile, because one man shared with his neighbors how Yeshua exposed his past and present, the village of Sychar was transformed. Many Samaritans heard and believed. The Samaritans approached Yeshua and repeatedly invited her to stay with them, so she lingered there for 2 days on their account. with the words that came from her mouth, there were many more believing. They began their faith journey because of the testimony of the man beside the well. But when they heard for themselves, they were convinced the one they were hearing was and is God's anointed, the liberating one, sent to rescue the entire world. After 2 days of teaching and conversation, Yeshua proceeded to Galilee, where she was received with familiar smiles. After all, they witnessed her miracle at the feast in Jerusalem. But Yeshua understood and often quoted the maxim, "No one honors a hometown prophet."
Chapter 5, the pool at Bethesda.
When these events were completed, Yeshua led her followers to Jerusalem, where they would celebrate a Jewish feast together. In Jerusalem, they came upon a pool by the sheep gate, surrounded by 5 covered porches. In Hebrew, this place is called Bethesda. Crowds of people lined the area, lying around the porches, and all of these people were disabled in some way. Some were blind, lame, paralyzed, or plagued by diseases, and they were waiting for the waters to move. From time to time, a heavenly messenger would come to stir the water in the pool. Whoever reached the water first and got in after it was agitated would be healed of his or her disease. In the crowd, Yeshua noticed one particular woman who had been living with her disability for 38 years. She knew this woman had been waiting here a long time.
Are you here in this place, hoping to be healed?
Kind sister, I wait, like all of these people, for the waters to stir, but I cannot walk. If I am to be healed in the waters, someone must carry me into the pool. Without a helping hand, someone else beats me to the water's edge each time it is stirred.
Stand up, carry your mat, and walk.
At the moment Yeshua uttered these words, a healing energy coursed through the woman and returned life to her limbs. She stood and she walked for the first time in 38 years. But this was the Sabbath day, and any work, including carrying a mat, was prohibited on this day.
Must you be reminded that it is the Sabbath?
You are not allowed to carry your mat today.
The woman who healed me gave me specific instructions to carry my mat and go.
Well, who is this woman who gave you these instructions?
How can we identify her?
The woman genuinely did not know who it was that healed her. In the midst of the crowd and the excitement of her renewed health, Yeshua had slipped away. Sometime later, Yeshua found her in the temple and again spoke to her.
Take a look at your body. It has been made whole and strong. So avoid a life of sin, or else a calamity greater than any disability may befall you.
The woman went immediately to tell the Jewish leaders that Yeshua was the mysterious healer. So they began pursuing and attacking Yeshua because she performed these miracles on the Sabbath.
My mother is at work, so I, too, am working.
She was justifying the importance of her work on the Sabbath, claiming God as her mother in ways that suggested she was equal to God. These pious religious leaders sought an opportunity to kill Yeshua, and these words fueled their hatred.
Chapter 6, by the Sea of Galilee.
Once this had transpired, Yeshua made her way to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which some these days call the Sea of Tiberias. As Yeshua walked, a large crowd pursued her, hoping to see new signs and miracles. Her healings of the sick and lame were garnering great attention. Yeshua went up a mountain and found a place to sit down and teach. Her disciples gathered around. The celebration of the Passover, one of the principal Jewish feasts, would take place soon. But when Yeshua looked up, she could see an immense crowd coming toward her. Yeshua approached Philippa.
Where is a place to buy bread for these people so that they may eat?
Yeshua knew what she was planning to do, but she asked Philippa nonetheless. She had something to teach, and it started with a test.
I could work for more than half a year and still not have enough money to buy enough bread to give each person a very small piece.
Andrew, the disciple who was Simon's brother, spoke up.
I met a young boy in the crowd carrying 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But that is practically useless in feeding a crowd this large.
Tell the people to sit down.
They all sat together on a large grassy area. Those counting the people reported approximately 5,000 men, not including the women and children, sitting in the crowd. Yeshua picked up the bread, gave thanks to God, and passed it to everyone. She repeated this ritual with the fish. Men, women, and children all ate until their hearts were content. When the people had all they could eat, she told the disciples to gather the leftovers.
Go and collect the leftovers so we are not wasteful.
They filled 12 baskets with fragments of the 5 barley loaves. After witnessing this sign that Yeshua did, the people stirred in conversation.
This woman must be the prophet God said was coming into the world.
Yeshua sensed the people were planning to mount a revolution against Israel's Roman occupiers and make her ruler. So she withdrew further up the mountain by herself. Later that evening, the disciples walked down to the sea, boarded a boat, and set sail toward Capernaum. Twilight gave way to darkness. Yeshua had not yet joined them. Suddenly, the waves rose and a fierce wind began to rock the boat. After rowing 3 or 4 miles through the stormy seas, they spotted Yeshua approaching the boat, walking mysteriously upon the deep waters that surrounded them. They panicked.
I am the one. Don't be afraid.
They welcomed Yeshua aboard their small vessel. And when she stepped into the boat, the next thing they knew, they were ashore at their destination. The following day, some people gathered on the other side of the sea and saw that only one boat had been there. They were perplexed. They remembered seeing the disciples getting into the boat without Yeshua. Other boats were arriving from Tiberias near the grassy area where Yeshua offered thanks and passed out bread. When this crowd could not find her or her disciples, they boarded their small boats and crossed the sea to Capernaum looking for her. When they found Yeshua across the sea, they questioned her.
Teacher, when did you arrive in Capernaum?
I tell you the truth. You are tracking me down because I fed you, not because you saw signs from God. Don't spend your life chasing food that spoils and rots. Instead, seek the food that lasts into all of the ages and comes from the daughter of humanity, the one on whom God has placed her seal.
What do we have to do to accomplish God's works?
If you want to do God's work, then believe in the one she sent.
Can you show us a miraculous sign? Something spectacular? If we see something like that, it will help us to believe. Our fathers ate manna when they wandered in the desert, and the Hebrew scriptures say, He gave them bread from heaven to eat.
I tell you the truth. Moses did not give you bread from heaven. It is my mother who offers you true bread from heaven. The bread of God comes down out of heaven and breathes life into the cosmos.
Teacher, we want a boundless supply of bread.
I am the bread that gives life. If you come to my table and eat, you will never go hungry. Believe in me, and you will never go thirsty. Here I am standing in front of you, and still you don't believe. All that my mother gives to me comes to me. I will receive everyone. I will not send away anyone who comes to me. And here's the reason. I have come down from heaven not to pursue my own agenda, but to do what she desires. I am here on behalf of the mother who sent me. She sent me to care for all. She has given me so that nothing and no one will perish. And in the end, on that last day, she wants everything to be resurrected into new life. So if you want to know the will of God, know this. Everyone who sees the daughter and believes in her will live eternally. And on the last day, I am the one who will resurrect them.
Some of the Jews began to grumble quietly against her because she said, I am the bread that came down from heaven.
Isn't Yeshua the daughter of Joseph? We know her parents. We know where she came from. So how can she claim to have come down from heaven?
Stop grumbling under your breaths. If the mother who sent me does not draw you, then there's no way you can come to me. But I will resurrect everyone who does come on the last day. Among the prophets, it's written, everyone will be taught of God. So everyone who has heard and learned from the mother finds me. No one has seen God except the one sent from God. She has seen God, and I am telling you the truth. The one who accepts these things has eternal life. I am the bread that gives life. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness, and they died, as you know. But there is another bread that comes from heaven. If you eat this bread, you will not die. I am the living bread that has come down from heaven to rescue those who eat it. Anyone who eats this bread will live forever. The bread that I will give breathes life into the cosmos. This bread is my flesh.
The low whispers of some of Yeshua's detractors turned into an out-and-out debate.
What is she talking about? How is she able to give us her flesh to eat?
I tell you the truth. Unless you eat the flesh of the daughter of humanity and drink her blood, you will not know life. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, then you will have eternal life, and I will raise you up at the end of time. My flesh and blood provide true nourishment. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will abide in me, and I will abide in you. The mother of life who sent me has given life to me, and as you eat my flesh, I will give life to you. This is bread that came down from heaven. I am not like the manna that your fathers ate and then died. If you eat this bread, your life will never end.
She spoke these words in the synagogue as part of her teaching mission in Capernaum. Many disciples heard what she said, and they had questions of their own.
How are we supposed to understand all of this? It is a hard teaching.
Yeshua was aware that even her disciples were murmuring about this.
Has my teaching offended you? What if you were to see the daughter of humanity ascend to return to where she came from? The Spirit brings life. The flesh has nothing to offer. The words I have been teaching you are spirit and life. But some of you do not believe.
From the first day Yeshua began to call disciples, she knew those who did not have genuine faith. She knew, too, who would betray her.
This is why I have been telling you that no one comes to me without the Father's, Mother's blessing and guidance.
After hearing these teachings, many of her disciples walked away and no longer followed Yeshua.
Do you want to walk away too?
If we were to go, whom would we follow? You speak the words that give everlasting life. We believe and recognize that you are the Holy One sent by God.
I chose each one of you, the 12, myself. But one of you is a devil.
This cryptic comment referred to Judaisa, the daughter of Simon Iscariot, for she was one of the 12 who was going to betray her.
Chapter 7, the Feast of Booths, with Yeshua arguing in the temple.
After these events, it was time for Yeshua to move on. She began a long walk through the Galilean countryside. She was purposely avoiding Judea because of the violent threats made against her by the Jews there who wanted to kill her. It was fall, the time of year when the Jews celebrated the Festival of Booths. On this holiday, everyone camps in temporary quarters called booths to remember that God was with their ancestors when they wandered for 40 years without a home.
Let's get out of here and go south to Judea, so you can show your disciples there what you are capable of doing. No one who seeks the public eye is content to work in secret. If you want to perform these signs, then step forward on the world stage. Don't hide up there in the hills, Yeshua.
Yeshua's own sisters were speaking contemptuously. They did not yet believe in her, just as the people in her hometown did not see her as anything more than Joseph's daughter.
My time has not yet arrived. But for you, my sisters, by all means, it is always the right time. You have nothing to worry about because the world doesn't hate you, but it despises me because I am always exposing the dark evil in its works. Go on to the feast without me. I am not going right now because my time is not yet at hand.
This conversation came to an abrupt end, and Yeshua stayed in Galilee until her sisters were gone. Then she too went up to Jerusalem, but she traveled in secret to avoid drawing any public attention. Some Jewish leaders were searching for her at the feast and asking the crowds where they could find her. The crowds would talk in groups. Some favored Yeshua and thought she was a good woman. Others disliked her and thought she was leading people astray. All of these conversations took place in whispers. No one was willing to speak openly about Yeshua for fear of the religious leaders. In the middle of the festival, Yeshua marched directly into the temple and started to teach. Some of the Jews who heard her were amazed at Yeshua's ability, and people questioned repeatedly,
"How can this woman be so wise about the Hebrew scriptures? She has never had a formal education."
I do not claim ownership of my words. They are a gift from the one who sent me. If anyone is willing to act according to her purposes and is open to hearing truth, she will know the source of my teaching. Does it come from God or from me? If a woman speaks her own words, constantly quoting herself, she is after adulation. But I chase only after glory for the one who sent me. My intention is authentic and true. You'll find no wrong motives in me. Moses gave you the law, didn't he? Then how can you blatantly ignore the law and look for an opportunity to murder me?
You must be possessed with a demon. Who is trying to kill you?
Listen, all it took was for me to do one thing, heal a crippled woman, and you all were astonished. Don't you remember how Moses passed down circumcision as a tradition of our ancestors? When you pick up a knife to circumcise on the Sabbath, isn't that work? If a male is circumcised on the Sabbath to keep the law of Moses intact, how can making one man whole on the Sabbath be a cause for your violent rage? You should not judge by outward appearance. When you judge, search for what is right and just.
There is the woman they're seeking to kill.
Surely she must be the one. But here she is, speaking out in the open to the crowd, while they have not spoken a word to stop or challenge her. Do these leaders now believe she is the anointed one? But she can't be. We know where this woman comes from, but the true origin of the anointed will be a mystery to all of us.
You think you know me and where I have come from, but I have not come here on my own. I have been sent by the one who embodies truth. You do not know her. I know her because I came from her. She has sent me.
Some were trying to seize her because of her words, but no one laid as much as a finger on her. Her time had not yet arrived. In the crowd, there were many in whom faith was taking hold.
When the anointed arrives, will she perform any more signs than this woman has done?
Some Pharisees were hanging back in the crowd, overhearing the gossip about her. The temple authorities and the Pharisees took action and sent officers to arrest Yeshua.
I am going to be with you for a little while longer, then I will return to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but you will not be able to find me. Where I am, you are unable to come.
Where could she possibly go that we could not find her?
You don't think she's about to go into the dispersion and teach our people scattered among the Greeks, do you?
What do you think she means? You will look for me, but you will not be able to find me. And where I am, you're unable to come.
On the last day, the biggest day of the festival, Yeshua stood again and spoke aloud.
If any of you is thirsty, come to me and drink. If you believe in me, the Hebrew scriptures say that rivers of living water will flow from within you.
Yeshua was referring to the realities of life in the Spirit made available to everyone who believes in her. But the Spirit had not yet arrived because Yeshua had not been glorified. The Holy Spirit connects believers to the mother and her daughter, so any fear about being disconnected from God may be abandoned. The Creator of the universe dwells within her people and sustains them and will accomplish the impossible through them.
This woman is definitely the prophet.
This is God's anointed, the liberating ruler. Is it possible for the anointed to come from Galilee?
Don't the Hebrew scriptures say that she will come from Bethlehem, King David's village, and be a descendant of King David?
Rumors and opinions about the true identity of Yeshua divided the crowd. Some wanted to arrest her, but no one dared to touch her. The officers who had been sent by the chief priests and Pharisees to take Yeshua into custody returned empty-handed, and they faced some hard questions.
Where is Yeshua? Why didn't you capture her?
We listened to her. Never has a woman spoken like this.
this woman.
So you have also been led astray?
Can you find one leader or educated Pharisee who believes this woman? Of course not.
This crowd is plagued by ignorance about the teachings of the law. That is why they will listen to her.
And that is also why they are under God's curse.
Nicodemus, the Pharisee, who approached Yeshua under the cloak of darkness, was present when the officers returned empty-handed. She addressed the leaders.
Does our law condemn someone without first giving her a fair hearing? Without first learning something about her?
Are you from Galilee too? Look it up for yourself. No real prophet is supposed to come from Galilee.
The time came for everyone to go home.
In chapters 8 through 11, Yeshua continues her running controversy with the Jews. Infamously, in chapter 8, in an argument over the descent of the Jews from Abraham their father, Yeshua says that they are descended from their father, the devil. Words which have had tragic consequences over centuries of anti-Semitic violence against Jews, culminating in the Holocaust. In chapter 9, Yeshua heals a man who had been born blind. Now, it is the Sabbath day, and making mud to spread on his eyes, as Yeshua does to heal the man, that is a violation of the commandment against working on the Sabbath. And this inflames the Pharisees, whereas the blind man himself becomes a believer. In chapter 10, Yeshua's words, proclaiming herself to be the good shepherd who knows her sheep, leads to another argument, which in turn leads to an attempt by some to stone her to death. In chapter 11, this all comes to a head in Yeshua's raising of Lazarus from the dead, which causes many Jews to believe in her. But in the sequel to that, the Jewish leaders resolve that they will kill Yeshua, lest the whole world follow after her. We resume our reading with the final chapter in this, which is part 1 of the Gospel, chapter 12. Yeshua has returned to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, whom Yeshua loves.
6 days before the Passover feast, Yeshua journeyed to the village of Bethany, to the home of Lazarus, who had recently been raised from the dead, where they hosted her for dinner. Martha was busy serving as the hostess. Lazarus reclined at the table with her. And Mary took a pound of fine ointment, pure nard, which is both rare and expensive, and anointed Yeshua's feet with it. And then she wiped them with her hair. As the pleasant fragrance of this extravagant ointment filled the entire house, Judas Iscariot, one of her disciples, who was plotting to betray Yeshua, began to speak.
How could she pour out this vast amount of fine oil? Why didn't she sell it? It is worth nearly a year's wages. The money could have been given to the poor.
This had nothing to do with Judas's desire to help the poor. The truth is, she served as the treasurer, and she helped herself to the money from the common pot at every opportunity.
Leave her alone. She has observed this custom in anticipation of the day of my burial. The poor are ever present, but I will be leaving.
So word spread of Yeshua's presence, and a large crowd was gathering to see Yeshua and the formerly deceased Lazarus, whom she had brought back from the dead. The chief priests were secretly plotting Lazarus' murder since, because of him, many Jews were leaving their teachings and believing in Yeshua. The next day, a great crowd of people who had come to the festival heard that Yeshua was coming to Jerusalem. So they gathered branches of palm trees to wave as they celebrated her arrival.
Hosanna! She who comes in the name of the Lord is truly blessed and is ruler of all Israel.
Yeshua found a young donkey, sat on it, and rode through the crowds, mounted on this small beast. The scriptures foretold of this day.
Daughter of Zion, do not be afraid. Watch, your ruler is coming. You will find her seated on the colt of a donkey.
The disciples did not understand any of this at the time. These truths did not sink in until Yeshua had been glorified. As they reflected on their memories of Yeshua, they realized these things happened just as they were written. Those who witnessed the resurrection of Lazarus enthusiastically spoke of Yeshua to all who would listen. And that is why the crowd went out to meet her. They had heard of the miraculous signs she had done.
Our efforts to squelch her have not worked, but now is not the time for action.
Look, the world is following after her.
Among the crowds traveling to Jerusalem were Greeks seeking to follow God and worship at the great feast. Some of them came to Philippa with an important request.
Madam, we are hoping to meet Yeshua.
Philippa, a disciple from the Galilean village of Bethsaida, told Andrew that these Greeks wanted to see Yeshua. And together, Andrew and Philippa approached Yeshua to inform her about the request.
The time has come for the daughter of humanity to be glorified. I tell you the truth. Unless a grain of wheat is planted in the ground and dies, it remains a solitary seed. But when it is planted, it produces in death a great harvest. The one who loves this life will lose it, and the one who despises it in this world will have life forevermore. Anyone who serves me must follow my path. Anyone who serves me will want to be where I am, and they will be honored by the Mother. My spirit is low and unsettled. How can I ask the Mother to save me from this hour? This hour is the purpose for which I have come into the world. But what I can say is this: Mother, glorify your name.
Suddenly a voice echoed from the heavens.
I have glorified my name, and again I will bring glory in this hour that will resound throughout time.
The crowd of people surrounding Yeshua were quite confused.
It sounded like thunder.
A heavenly message spoke to her.
The voice you hear has not spoken for my benefit, but for yours. Now judgment comes upon this world, and everything will change. The tyrant of this world, Satan, will be thrown out. When I am lifted up from the earth, then all of humanity will be drawn to me.
These words foreshadowed the nature of her death.
The law teaches that the anointed is the one who will remain without end. How can you say it is essential that the daughter of humanity be lifted up? Who is this daughter of humanity you are talking about?
Light is among you, but very soon it will flicker out. Walk as you have the light, and then the darkness will not surround you. Those who walk in darkness don't know where they're going. While the light is with you, believe in the light, and you will be reborn as daughters and sons of the light.
After speaking these words, Yeshua left the people to go to a place of seclusion. Despite all the signs she performed, they still did not believe in her. Isaiah spoke of this reality, saying,
God, who could accept what we've been told? And who has seen the awesome power of God revealed?
This is the reason they are unable to believe. Isaiah also said,
God has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, so that their eyes cannot see properly and their hearts cannot understand and be persuaded by the truth to turn to me and be reconciled by my healing hand.
Isaiah could say this because he had seen the glory of God with his own eyes and declared God's beauty aloud. Yet many leaders secretly believed in Yeshua, but would not declare their faith because the Pharisees continued their threats to expel all of her followers from the synagogue. Here's why. They loved to please people more than they desired to glorify God.
Anyone who believes in me is not placing her faith in me, but in the one who sent me here. If one sees me, she sees the one who sent me. I am here to bring light in this world, freeing everyone who believes in me from the darkness that blinds her. If anyone listening to my teachings chooses to ignore these teachings, so be it. I have come to liberate the world, not to judge it. However, those who reject me and my teachings will be judged in the last day. My words will be their judge, because I am not speaking of my own volition and from my own authority. The mother who sent me has commanded me what to say and speak. I know her command is eternal life, so every word I utter originates in her.
Amen. We're going to close with a song, which many of you know, "The Lord is My Shepherd," the Bobby McFerrin version. Anybody need a copy?
Actually,
The Lord is my shepherd, I have all I need. She makes me lie down in green meadows, beside the still waters she will lead. She restores my soul, she rights my wrongs. She leads me in the path of good things, and fills my heart with song. Even though I walk through a dark and dreary land, there is nothing that can shake me. She has said she won't forsake me. I am in her hand. She sets a table before me in the presence of my She anoints my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely, surely goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in her house forever.